Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Mem Dalid Amud Aleph, starting with Daf Mem Gimel Amud Beis, 5 lines from the bottom. Our Mishnah had said that when there is taroives chametz, although it's more mekil in regards to the chiyuv kares when a person were to eat a kezayis of taroives chametz, but nonetheless he's over a lav. The Gemara now speaks about with a din of mixing both heter and iser to make the shiur. Says the Gemara, Omer bi'abohu, Omer bi'yochanon, kol isurin shebat Torah ein heter mitztaref li'isir, chutz me isurei nazir. Rabbi Abahu says, name Rabbi Yochanan, that we do not mix together that which is heter to the mashlim, the shiur of iser, with one exception, he says, and that is nazir. For example, a person who were to eat half a kezayis of chaylev, which is certainly aser, and a half a kezayis with the basar, then, since that is mutter, Rabbi Yochanan tells us that one will not mitztaref the shiur to be chayiv for achilas chaylev. However, when it comes to nazir, we do mitztaref the shiur. Sharei Amra Torah, the Torah says mishras, because in regards to the nazir who's prohibited from drinking wine and eating grapes, it says in the posuk, it says, B'chol mishras anovim lo yishte. It states that the soaking of the grapes, he shall not go ahead and drink. Now, if we're talking about when you soak, let's say, a piece of bread into wine, and it's referring to the kezayis of the wine itself, so that we don't need to be told. Therefore, when it's talking about the soaked wine, it must be referring to the bread that is eaten together with the wine that combines to make a shiur of a kezayis. So here we have an exception, says Rabbi Yochanan. Here we'll say that indeed it's mitztaref to make a shiur of a kezayis of iser, even though half of the shiur is heter and half the shiur is iser, the combination will combine to make a shiur of iser. V'zi'iri Omar, af sa'or bal taktiru. We even have another exception, because sa'or, the mincha offering, is not to have any leaven. And the Torah says if it has leaven, you cannot burn it on the altar. And here the normal shiur is a kezayis. And yet it states over here that when a person were to then burn even half of a kezayis that is not leaven, with a half that is yes leaven, the combination will be a fulfillment of this iser. Kiman, who is this like, says the Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer, the dorish kol, as we learned earlier, Rabbi Eliezer darshans the word kol in this pasuk, and the pasuk in regards to menachos tells us, kol ha-mincha asher takriv la-Hashem lo yisaseh chametz ki kol sa'or v'kol devash lo yisaktiru mimenu isha la-Hashem. So the word kol comes to teach us, it includes even the taroives, the combination. If you have half that is unleavened and half that is leavened and is both burned together on the mizbeach, so that is going to then be over an iser. Ihochi asked the Gemara on Daf Mem Daled Amud Aleph at the very top. Le'inin chametz ba'Pesach nami. Then, in regards to taroives chametz, we should also say the same thing, and say the combination of that chametz, which is chametz gomor with non-chametz mixed together, will then mechayev a shiur of a kezayis. Answers the Gemara, en hachinami. According to this, indeed, Rabbi Eliezer, that's true. This would be another exception, that this indeed would also mashlim a shiur. But why was it stated only the case of su'or and not the case of chametz? To exclude that which Abaye says. The Omar yesh haktor lifchos mikizayis. Because according to Abaye, if one burns on the altar even a little bit, a mashahu of leaven, of chametz, of the menachos, then he'll already be over the iser. Kamash malan de haktara lav lifchos mikizayis. Therefore, this statement over here is saying it has to have a shiur of kezayis. Granted, it could be a combination of half a kezayis of unleavened with half an kazayis with leaven, but it can't be a mashu like Abaye says, and therefore that's why Zeiri brought this as an example. Says the Gemara Vayter, Yossi Rav Dimi v'kamar lala shmaitza. Rav Dimi was sitting and he said over the shmaitza that he just heard from Rabbi Yochanan that we just mentioned now. Again, that called Isurin Shebatar ein heter mitztaref li'isur, except for the isur of Nazir. Omar le Abai le Rav Dimi. Abai then comments to Rav Dimi and he says, V'chol isurin shebetorah ein mitztaref li'isur. Is that so? V'hatnan, behold, it states in the following Mishnah, Hamikba shel truma. Mikba is a dish that is thick. It's a thick tavshil, like daisa, and it's here of truma. So therefore, it's only able to be eaten by a kohen, not to a non-kohen. V'hashum v'hashemen shel chulin, and the shum, the garlic and the shemen and the oil that is put on top of this tavshil, in order to then give it some spices, this is made out of chulin. So the Mishnah says, "V'noga b'tvul yoim b'mikzosan." A tvul yoim is somebody who already went and was toivel himself in the mikvah, but he still is not yet tor until nightfall. So it says that he then touched mikzosan, meaning he touched some of the shum or the shemen. States in the Mishnah, the din posal es kulon, is going to posel even the mikvah, which is indeed the entire mikvah itself. Why? Because we say that the spices of the shemen and the spices of the shum is now tafil to the ikr, which is the mikvah itself. By the tvul yom touching the spices, then it's then going to then be posel the entire mikvah. The Mishnah goes on to say in the Sefer, Hamikvah shel chulin. Here's the opposite case. Here you have the mikvah that is chulin. V'hashum v'hashemen shel truma, and the spices are of truma. V'noga tvul yom b'mikzosan, and tvul yom touches some of these spices on the shum or the shemen. Loi posal ela makom magoi bilvad. Here it says it's only posel the makom magoi, where they touched, where the tvul yom actually touched the shemen or the shum, which means to say that the rest of the mikveh is not going to be posel. But over here, the chiddush is that the spices will be posel, even though the spices themselves really should be tafil to the chulin. But nonetheless, we're saying that nonetheless the tvul yom will be posel this truma of the spices. So says the Gemara, v'havina ba, let us analyze and ask on this din. Makom she b'malgu mamai psula, in the place where the tvul yom touched, why are those spices going to be posel? Hai batla lahu tavlin baroiv. Hare, the tavlin should be bottled to the roiv of the mikveh, whereby that even the spices themselves should not become posel. Answers the Gemara, Omar Rabbi Barachano matam hoyil v'zar loike alem b'kezayis. Is it not because the tam itself makes it so the zar, the non-kohen who eats it, he will be chayiv for a kezayis of this truma? Heichi dami, the Gemara asks, how is this, what's the case that he will be eating a kezayis that will be chayiv for the non-kohen? La mishum dehetem mitztaref. These are we not talking about the spices combined with the mikvah, and therefore that becomes a hitztarfus to be mashlim the shir, and that's why the non-kohen will be chayiv for the eating of the kezayis. So therefore, Abai brings the proof over here that indeed we see over here that there is a combination of heter and iser to be mashlim the shir. The Gemara says, "Loy, you have no proof from here because my kezayis. What's the kezayis that we're talking about for the zar who's eating the kezayis? Over here, we're not talking about hitztarfus. Rather, the ika kezayis b'kedei achillas pras. We're talking about if you were to eat the entire mikvah, which would be, let's say, 4 beitzim, and that entire mikvah that he would eat, the 4 beitzim, he would also eat a kezayis of the tavlin, which itself is truma, which itself is is also for the non-kohen. So that's why he's going to be over. Ihochi asked the Gemara, if that's the case, that we're talking about kedei achilas pras, and therefore, so the Gemara says, Kezayis b'dei achilas pras. The Gemara asks, deraisa is it deraisa that he would be chayiv the non-kohen for eating it? Omar la'in, indeed, it would be deraisa the shear of kedei achilas pras. Yihochi now, the Gemara asks, if that's so, then amai pligi rabbanah le'der Rabbi Eliezer b'kutach habavli. Kutach habavli is another type of, we said, taroives chametz. So there, we can say the same thing. Let the Chacham agree with Rabbi Eliezer that toich achilas pras, one will be chayiv for eating kazayas. Because over there, here we're talking about eating a full kazayas. There's nothing to argue about with Rabbi Eliezer. Elamai, says the Gemara, mishum deheter misarv le'isr. So here, Abai concludes his proof by saying we see that indeed it's the heter that combines with the isr to mechayiv the non-kohen from eating the truma. Still, the Gemara says soif. Going back one step, the way to read the Gemara is better like this. Elamai, so what are you going to say? What is the alternative? Since you can't say that the Rabbanan should not argue with Rabbi Eliezer, but still, what are you going to say? You're going to say, Mishum deheter mitzaref le'isr. That's what you're going to suggest. If that's the case, still you have to explain, Amai pligi Rabbanan alei Rabbi Eliezer bekutach habavli. That has not been explained. Even if you want to suggest what you're saying now to be the case, that here we're talking about that it's heter mitzaref le'isr, but at the end of the day, why is it that the Rabban are cholik and Rabbi Eliezer in the case of kutach habavli? After all, we have over there kedei achilas pras. Elohanach lekutach habavli deles bekezayis b'dei achilas pras. We have to say that no, the case of the kutach habavli is even if you were to eat 4 beitzim in achilas pras, you will not be eating a full kazayis of the bread that is inside of it. Here, when it comes to the case of the kutach habavli, since it's a dip, if a person were to then gulp it down very quickly, then we'll say that's not the way of eating such a dish, which is a dish that is normally just dipping into, and therefore we'll say batla daite kolodam, and that's why he's not going to be chayiv. V'i mishum de kashoter mishtar kashotar v'ochil less bekezayis b'dei achilas pras. And if he's only dipping it, so there's not enough bread that he'll be eating, that'll be kedei achilas pras, that he's going to be eating a full kazayis in the shear of 4 beitzim. The Gemara now asks from the following: Eisvei shtei kedeiros achas shel chulin ve'achas shel truma. We have 2 kedeiros, 2 pots, one of chulin and one of truma. Ulifneim shtei mudochos, and you have in front of them 2 what's called mortars. That means that you smash the peppers into this little bowl, this mortar, and you have one of truma and one of chulin. So it says over here, and these went into those. So the din is mutarin, that we don't have a concern that the truma went into the chulin. Rather, we assume that the chulin went into the chulin, and the truma went into the truma, whereby the non-kohen can still eat the chulin, and therefore mutarin. Why shani oimer? Because I say truma letoicha truma nafla. The chulin toicha chulin naflu. The truma that went inside the truma, that remains the same. The chulin went inside the chulin, therefore that remains the same. So therefore again, the non-kohen can eat the chulin. We don't assume that the truma fell into the chulin. And now the more challenges. If you're going to say that indeed that the shear of kedei achilas pras is deraisa, so over here maybe there's an amount that's going to be the shear of kedei achilas pras, a full kazayis, that the chulin went into, that the truma went into the chulin, whereby it's a suffix deraisa. How can therefore he say that I can assume that the chulin went to chulin, the truma went to truma? Hare, maybe not. Maybe the truma went to the chulin. Since it's a suffix deraisa, we have to go lechumra. He answers and says, leave truma tavlin, because that's only dirabbanan. Midi araisa truma is only dogon, and here we're talking about tavlin. So since it's only dirabbanan, we say sveika dirabbanan lekula. The Gemara asks a similar question Shtei kupos, when you have two different boxes, achas that are filled up with grain. These two boxes have a lot of grain inside of each one, and it stays like this. It says, achas shel chulin ve'achas shel truma. These two boxes, one is chulin and one is truma. V'lifneim beis si'in, and in front of us is a measurement of si'in. Each one has a saw in front of it. Achas shel chulin ve'achas shel truma. And again, v'naflu elu toich elu mutarin. And these fell into those. And we say the din is mutar. Again, the assumption is that the chulin went into the chulin, and the truma went into the truma, whereby the non-kohen can eat the chulin. Why? Shani oimer chulin toich chulin naflu truma toich truma naflu. The Amris, the Gemara asked the same question now. Kizayis v'de'achilas pras di'araisa amaya minon shani oimer. How can you say that ani oimer? Now you can't say over here like we answered before that it's only tavlin, because here we're talking about dagon, and dagon is di'araisa. So now we're left with the question: if indeed that it's kidei achilas pras is di'araisa, so maybe the truma fell into the chulin, whereby if a person would eat from there, a non-kohen would eat from there, a kezayis, kedei achilas pras, he'd be over in iser deraisa. So therefore we should have to say that safek deraisa lechumra. Answers the Gemara, Omar le hanach letruma bizman hazeh dirabanan. Truma bizman hazeh is only dirabanan, and therefore we can also say, can we make as we did before, that over here, since it's a suffix of dirabanan, sveika dirabanan lekula.